Welcome to the Why on Earth Community Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Perry, and today we're visiting with Kate Williams, the CEO of 1% for the Planet. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. It's really exciting to have this opportunity to speak with you today and to hear about the great work you guys are doing as a hub, a nexus between a whole bunch of for-profit companies and a whole bunch of nonprofits who are all working to help create a better world.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. And I would add individuals to the mix also because we're connecting them in as well.
Beautiful. Yes. So let me say by way of introduction that Kate Williams is CEO of 1% for the Planet, as I mentioned, a global movement inspiring businesses and individuals to support environmental nonprofit solutions through annual membership and everyday actions. The network of more than 3,000 members in more than 40 countries gave over $25 million to environmental nonprofits last year. During her tenure, which is 2015 through the present, Kate has led significant growth in network scale and impact, as well as deep work on best practices for giving strategies and partnership development. And in 2020, she and her team developed a new strategic plan with a North Star goal of becoming the most recognized global environmental community. Kate earned a Bachelor of Arts at Princeton University, where she majored in history, and a Master of Science at the MIT Sloan School of Management, where she focused on organizational systems. She has served on several nonprofit boards, currently Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont and Shelburne Farms. Kate is a master's distance runner, we'll have to ask you about that, and kitchen gardener. And she lives in Vermont with her husband and two children who are, as we were just discussing before beginning our recording, are young adult children, similar in age to my own. So we'll chat a bit about that transition to college and everything with all that's going on in the world right now. But Kate, what a joy to have this opportunity to visit with you. And I thought as a way to start, if you might summarize what you guys are up to at 1% for the Planet, and how you're making a big difference in the world right now.
Yeah, and I can also first say that basically master's distance runner means I'm just like an old distance runner. Just a nice way of saying that. So at 1% for the Planet, what we're doing right now is being thrown away by how many members are stepping forward, how many companies are stepping forward to become members. So, even in this really challenging, crazy, unusual year, we've had a growth in membership. So even those numbers that I sent you that you used in the bio, we actually now have more than close to 4,000 business members and just over 600 individual members, right around in that ballpark. So, lots of strong growth. And basically what that means, so what it means when we have a member is that they're a company who says we're committing to giving 1% of our annual sales. So annual, every year, they're doing this every year, to environmental nonprofits. And our team supports those companies in figuring out, companies and individuals in figuring out where to allocate their giving and how to do it in a thoughtful, strategic way, which is actually can be challenging. I'm sure we've all felt like overwhelmed at times. And so we try and help guide it into a strategy so that you can feel like, great, I'm doing my part. I'm giving in an aligned way with my brand or with my values or both. And then we certify that giving at the end of the year. And then we also vet and approve the amazing nonprofits in our network that are the recipients of the giving.
Which I have to throw in there, the Why on Earth community is now one of the vetted and qualified nonprofits eligible for some of that giving through the network. And we're really excited about that connection and partnership.
Likewise.
Yeah. So these are amazing numbers. And I know some of the businesses that are part of the 1% for the Planet ecosystem are themselves quite large in size and scope. I believe Patagonia, for example, is a member, and I understand, they're closing in on something like $1 billion a year in annual sales. And I don't know their personnel count, but they've got quite a number of employees. And so through all of these organizations, it's amazing because you're also reaching tens or hundreds of thousands of employees and individuals connected to these different organizations.
Yeah, and that really nails it. I mean, one of the things that we believe in and that we're seeing the power of right now is network effect. And that's like one of the great things about 1% for the planet is not only is each company making this individual commitment that's important to them, and that's part of sort of how they implement their change in the world, or part of how they do it. But also each of these companies, is a node that then is extending the story out, is extending the opportunity out. And that's one of the reasons we wanted individual membership, is we wanted to create just that way for people to say, hey, not only am I going to buy 1% for the planet products when I can, but I also want to give my 1%. And so, we've really seen this amazing, power of the network expanding globally. And it has in the, for this year, for example, it's just has felt like this, really powerful momentum that grows the awareness of our brand, which then grows the interest in joining, which then grows the awareness of our brand. And it just is this beautiful cycle of goodness for the planet.
Well, this is so great. I want to throw it right out there as a call to action for any of our audience who might want to join 1% for the planet at the individual level. What's the best way for them to do that? And how involved or cumbersome of a process is that?
Yeah, thanks for calling that out. It's pretty easy. Our belief is that everyone has a 1%. And so for our individuals, the way we set it up is that you go to 1%fortheplanet.org and you can click on the join button, and it will take you to a page where you can sign up, and essentially you tell us what's your 1%. Maybe it's 1% of your income, maybe it's 1% of something else, but we want you to set a commitment that you want to be held accountable to. And then we become your partners in either helping you identify who you want to give to, and then certainly at the end of the year, certifying that giving. And what we've heard from our members who we talk to and we do surveys and stuff like that, what we've heard from these individual members is like, thank you. This is so helpful, because either I felt overwhelmed, so I wasn't doing anything. I felt kind of paralyzed. And when you break it down to your 1%, it's like, okay, I can do something. And then tomorrow I can do something else, and it can all add up. So we help break it down, and then we help you to feel like you're being, accountable to what you've committed to. And one thing I will say for individuals is we really believe that this should be accessible to all people. And so it's not just if your 1% is a lot of dollars, it's truly democratic. So if you are a college student and you essentially have debt and not income, you can give volunteer hours. You can give your 1% in the form of your time. That's not the case for companies. We have sort of a different breakdown for them, but for individuals, we really want everyone to participate. So, right now in our network, we literally have teenagers giving 1% of their babysitting money, and high net worth individuals giving 1% of their high net worth. And they're all equal contributors to our planet, because it's for everyone. It's their 1%, which is the beautiful part of it.
Yeah, I really like how inclusive it is, in that a percentage allows anyone to participate in a meaningful way. And clearly, those of us working in the environmental space, I think, are developing an increased and more nuanced sense of responsibility and sensitivity to some of the social challenges that we're facing as a society. And to me, this is what a great nexus and invitation for folks from all kinds of backgrounds to engage.
Good. Yeah. I mean, that's very much the intent of the individual program and of our core purpose, which is to ensure that our planet and future generations thrive. And so it's not just the planet, it's future generations on that planet. And so we really are attuned to, both planet and people, and how those go together in terms of how we make our giving decisions, who we give to, how we come together to give, things like that.
I am writing down verbatim the tag you just articulated, because I love it, and I love that the word thrive is in there. Excellent. So, by the way, one of the things we're working on for our global ambassador network at the Y on Earth community is a series of achievement badges that we can award to folks in our ambassador network as a way to acknowledge, recognize, and celebrate their accomplishments. And I'm just thinking, gosh, maybe we should create also one for the 1% for the planet giving at the individual level. It would be such a fun way to encourage folks to get involved with this.
Cool. That sounds great.
Yeah. So I'm really curious, how did 1% for the planet get started? And what were the early days like for the organization?
Yeah. Well, it's now almost 20 years ago. So it's, there's probably parts of it that are starting to be lore. But I think it's mostly solidly factual. But we were founded in 2002. And the story goes that it was on the banks of the Madison River in Montana that Yvon Chouinard, who's the founder of Patagonia, who you mentioned earlier, and his friend Craig Matthews, who founded a company called Blue Ribbon Flies, which is a fly fishing company right there in that Madison River Valley. But so they were fishing, which is their favorite activity. And it was, a place that is a really special fishing spot for them. And it was threatened with some development. And so they kind of had this connect the dots aha moment, realizing that their respective businesses, as well as their passion and one of the places where a lot of their customers would use their products was threatened. And so as the business that kind of brought all those pieces together, they felt like, well, of course we should be, working and contributing to protect this place so that people can continue to enjoy a healthy outdoors and have places to go use these outdoor products that we're creating. So from that conversation, both of them had been very charitably oriented anyway, but they kind of crystallized this idea that, really all businesses will benefit from a planet that's healthy and thriving and also have an impact on that planet. So kind of have an obligation to make sure it stays healthy and thriving. And so they created 1% for the planet as like the movement builder to get other companies involved in, making this commitment and giving. And I think, I wasn't around for the early days. I started in 2015, but I think it was, has definitely served us well to have such fabulous founders who are, charismatic and thoughtful and authentic and, willing to do the work to talk to their peers. And so they built a, core group of members early on and then pretty quickly kind of spun it out as its own nonprofit. We steadily grew and had some great moments, like when Jack Johnson joined, the musician, and he kind of took 1% for the planet on tour with him. That really created some great visibility. And then, really again, starting in, around 2016, we saw a really nice uptick as we really worked to leverage that network effect and support our members to tell that great story and to just get clear on all the great values. And then I would say too, so we do what we can to grow our model, but we've been supported by shifts in consumer awareness and interest. So over the past 10 years and really accelerating over just the past 3 years, consumers are saying loud and clear, like they want to vote with their dollars. So they want brands that are authentic in making commitments to do good for the planet, to address social issues, to have a legit purpose. So it's really remarkable to see those stats because they're, in the 90% of would switch a brand for, the company that has a purpose and, are compelled by, it would pay more for a brand that has a purpose. So there's some really interesting and supportive statistics that kind of line up with the growth that we've seen, because then businesses really can see 1% for the planet not only as the right thing to do for the planet, so not just like the heart choice, but it's also a good business choice increasingly, and really it speaks to what consumers are wanting. And that's awesome because we really want to have what's doing right for the planet be the right thing for business as well, because then we can really move things forward.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. Yeah, it's a real win-win. I'm just sitting here imagining in the next handful of years, what if 1% of the businesses in the world were part of 1% for the planet? what a
Yeah.
tremendous change that would make.
Yeah. Well, maybe you were a fly on the wall when we were having our strategic plan conversations where we landed at the most recognized environmental community, because we had talked about, like, should we have some sort of numerical goal? And I looked up, how many businesses are there? And we decided that might be a little hard to track, so it'd sound more theoretical. So for us, I can say just, the brand, that recognition lines up with the same sort of spirit of 1% of all companies belonging, because really the greater the awareness of 1% for the planet, the more companies join and the more we're able to get giving out to those amazing nonprofits. So along the same lines, but yes, we aspire to similar goal.
That's wonderful. Yeah, well, certainly here at the Y on Earth community, we're happy to help with that effort in whatever ways we reasonably can do so. It's wonderful. I love the network effect. We see that a lot in the work we're doing, and I actually spoke about that a bit in the book Y on Earth that I wrote and published a few years back. And to me, it's one of the things that gives me great hope. Because as we're engaging with friends and family and interacting with folks in our communities, whether local or virtual or both, we can spread good news and great opportunities. And as more and more folks get involved, as you see all of these positive feedback loops kicking in and amplifying essentially. And it really does give me a lot of hope.
Absolutely. And I mentioned sort of our belief that everyone has a 1%. I think another belief that shapes 1% for the planet is that, people don't, well, I'll state it in the positive way. People change and invest when they see there's the potential for that to result in something happening. So people, hope is motivating. The sense that you can do something positive is motivating. It can be paralyzing and certainly depressing to, feel like, oh, it's all falling apart. There's not anything I can do. So we really focus not on being, not on denying that there are very, very real urgent challenges, but saying, okay, accept it as fact. What are we going to do? And what's happening out there? And what's amazing and, certainly keeps me going every day is, there are so many amazing things happening across our network with, giving partnerships that are resulting in, trees planted, pumas protected, ocean plastic cleaned up, policy changes, the list goes on. And I am very fortunate to be surrounded by that all the time. And we really try and get that out to our network because that inspires you to do more.
Mm. Yeah, beautiful. I'm sitting here thinking about Yvon Chouinard, and if I'm recalling correctly, he wrote this book called "Let My People Go Fishing." Was that his?
Let My People Go Surfing.
Oh, surfing. That's what it was.
You probably could have
told the fishing story. It made me think of fishing.
Yeah.
Let my people
go totally
surfing.
Could have written "Let My People Go Fishing" because that would probably be me too.
Yeah, and I'm so struck. I know that Patagonia, along with others like Dr. Bronner's and the Rodale Institute, are launching now a regenerative organic certification, which is so important for the agriculture and soil and that aspect of our carbon sequestration strategies worldwide. And, some of these leaders have already had such tremendous positive impact and are continuing to have real positive impact. And I'm wondering, with the network effect, what are you seeing from the vantage point of 1% for the planet in terms of how you're helping to bring organizations and people together to catalyze new innovations and efforts and campaigns?
Yeah, such a great question, because that is something that really has been wonderful to see. So we certify 1% of sales given to environmental nonprofits. Like, that's the core of our model. But what we have found is that in so doing, we create a community, the network of those committed givers, those 1% members, and then we get them together and like all these other things happen that we're not certifying, we're not controlling, we're not dictating, but they're really good things that are happening. So, say it's a company that starts out and, they're kind of a cool outdoorsy brand, but essentially their environmental giving is the only like measurably sustainable thing that they're doing. But then their nonprofit partners like, hey, too much plastic. Like, why don't you sort of think about this? So, they make some changes. And then, the founder meets Yvonne and he's like, hey, great product, but you have a lot of plastic packaging. And so, and this is a real story. And, 10 years later, they've developed a new plastic for their product. They've eliminated all plastic from their packaging. They, are like this really sustainable carbon neutral brand. We don't have anything like officially to do with any of that other stuff beyond their giving, but so much of it was inspired by their connections within the network. So that's one company that I've described. We have 4,000 members, 3,500 to 4,000 members. And all of them are influencing each other and learning from each other and doing things that we don't even know about that are amazing, because they're in tune with each other and this, through each other, this larger world of thinking about how they can do their business differently. So it's super powerful.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. It's making me think of how the mycelium networks function in the soil, in forest and other ecosystems, where information exchange is happening among all of these nodes and participants. And it's so important, right? Ecologically speaking.
Yeah, definitely. And it's been interesting organizationally, because at times we've thought, like, should we be doing more and expanding beyond our model? And, we always continue to ask that. But what I, increasingly feel is like our model creates this amazingly strong and durable foundation that drives like real change. So we feel very committed to that. But on that foundation, so many other things grow and build, and we don't have to own those. We don't have to control those. We're creating the conditions for connections between really awesome companies to, create things that are beyond what we could possibly control, even if we wanted to, or, so it's really great to see, and a great organizational learning.
I love hearing about that, because I'm also struck that, for those of us in leadership positions, we have this interesting, sometimes tension and often opportunity to create the context in which others can just run and shine and do their creative work and their regenerative work and stewardship and sustainability work. And we don't have to be in control. And I think, at least for me personally, in my professional pathway over the years, it has led me to a much more joyful and relaxed way of being day to day, when I know I don't need to be in, even attempt to be in control over all these things that at the end of the day, I'm probably not going to be able to control anyway. And instead to, create connections and contexts of inspiration, essentially, where others can just run with it is amazing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I totally agree. And I think that your like ecological example is really important, because it's like, either being the like broader environment or understanding your part in it creates the opportunity for other things to happen, which doesn't mean you then need to own them, but you're in relationship to them. So it's really important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Letting go. Yeah. Thank goodness for that. So I'm also really curious. So I'm doing a little math. It looks like you've been at 1% for the planet for about 5 years. And in that time, your children, who are one in early 20s, the other late teens, same basic ages as my kids, were probably going through their high school years, plus or minus. And I want to just ask you sort of a personal question as an organizational leader with all those responsibilities and commitments of your time. How has it been, vis-a-vis being a mother of young adult children now and, teenagers, both just a few years ago?
Yeah. I definitely put in long hours. So, there were times when I would feel like, oh, darn, I missed another soccer game or whatever. But I think I am fortunate. I have a really close relationship with my kids, and they are my like number one champion. So, they, I would come home from a long day and they would have made dinner, or, by the time they both, left for college, they were absolutely able to like do everything that you need to do to run a household and manage a life and manage your finances, in part because that was the way our life as a family had to work. And so I think, I would say they were, great supporters, great champions, and, really proud of what I was doing. And it created some great opportunities for us too, to sort of connect about powerful issues and, read different things together and, learn about different things. And so it's been a great ride.
Yeah, it's so great to hear. And my smile's probably ear to ear right now, because I'm thinking about my own children, Osha and Hunter, and each of them have been on a podcast episode, because they both have such interesting knowledge and perspective. And they're at the age now where I'm learning from them as much as I might be teaching them, or probably even I'm learning more at this point than I'm teaching them. And it's such a joy, and they're both on pathways in service to the world and to humanity. And I know your children are also pursuing areas of study that are in service as well. And we just tell us what.
Sure,
what
yeah, and I feel like I should preface it by saying I've always felt like, if they, the best outcome is for each of the kids to be doing what is exactly their right thing. So if it's to be the best belly dancer in the world, like, beautiful, like, that's absolutely right. My daughter, who's the older one, is just one of the smartest people I know. And she has pretty much found her passion in Arctic science. So she's really interested in climate change and is interested in doing field research on sort of the impacts in Arctic region and polar regions. So super interesting. And, I have to have her translate some of her scientific essays for me so I can understand all of what she's talking about. But I'm so glad that she's going to be going out in the world. And then my son is just kind of getting started more as in his college career, but is interested in environmental science. And I feel like I want to say, I promise I didn't foist that on them, but I also will say I'm really, honored that they have learned and developed their sort of lens for expressing the way they want to commit to, offering their smarts to do good in the world.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. And just got to give a shout out, since your daughter's pursuing the polar regions, that Julian Strobe, a friend and one of the most cited climate scientists, was on a recent podcast episode talking about what's going on at the North Pole in particular, but also the cryosphere, the frozen regions throughout the world from a climate perspective. And for folks who want to dive deeper on that, it's a really good conversation, because clearly there's a lot going on in regions of the planet that most of us don't visit and probably aren't going to. And to hear from folks who are spending time there and are studying those places, I think is one of the ways we all become more informed. Yeah. So quick shout out to Julian and to everyone working on the snow and ice issues that we're facing right now.
And I'd also just a quick shout out to getting out there and falling in love with the outdoors. Just to say that for our family, that was such a key part of how we grew up together, was, paddling trips in northern Maine. And, we live in a pretty rural area, and my son and daughter and I had a chance to travel some in Patagonia. And my daughter and I last year went to the southern Patagonian ice field. And just, those times outdoors, remembering and connecting to the source of, this just sort of beauty and wildness that for me are so important to stay connected to, that really fuel my sort of energy. And in our family, again, have sort of connected us all around what it is that we're fighting for. So just shout out to the planet.
Shout out to the planet. Yeah. The source. I love that. I absolutely love that. I want to ask you about where you're living. You referred to it as the Shire earlier today. And before doing that, let me just remind our audience that this is the Why on Earth Community Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Perry, and today we're speaking with Kate Williams, the CEO of 1% for the Planet. And I'm going to give a few shout outs here to a number of our partners and sponsors who are making this podcast series possible, along with the rest of our community mobilization work through the Why on Earth platform. And these sponsors and partners include, of course, 1% for the Planet, Earth Coast Productions, the Lidge Family Foundation, Alpine Botanicals, Purium, Earth Hero, Vera Herbals, Growing Spaces, Soilworks, Earth Water Press, Dr. Bronner's, and Waylay Waters. And similar to this opportunity to join at the individual level, the 1% for the Planet movement, we also have individual donors who have joined our monthly giving program. And thank you to all of you for that generous support of what we're doing. And for folks who join at certain levels, you can sign up to receive monthly shipments of the Waylay Waters CBD hemp-infused aromatherapy soaking salts, which are really great for self-care and perhaps for maybe a little bit of soreness after a big long hike out in the wilderness or whatever it might be. So a huge thanks to everyone making all this possible. And yeah, you know, Kate, I am so struck by the importance of, and this will eventually lead us to asking you about the Shire, but I'm struck by the importance of that personal connection with the living planet. And it's obvious to many of us that in this day and age, with such an urbanized and technological way of life for so many of us, that there's a whole bunch of us humans who don't really have that direct experience or haven't yet cultivated that. And one of the things I think a lot about and hope we all can help create and inculcate going forward is opportunities for more and more of us, and perhaps even most of us, to have more of that direct experience with the natural living world, the wilderness, the ocean, etc. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about how we might do more of that as a society?
It's such a great question. And I think, but, you know, I've thought about that a lot because, you know, during this period of COVID, when we've, you know, all been sort of isolated more, you know, where I happen to be isolated is at my home, which is at the dead end of a dirt road in Vermont. And so, you know, a kind of interesting gift of this hard time is that I've, you know, seen now sort of a couple season changes, you know, in a much more intimate way than when I'm leaving home to go to work every day. And, you know, I'm walking in the same woods every day. And, you know, so I've just reflected on feeling really grateful for that, but also being aware that I have, like, it is truly a gift that you know, that not everyone has access to. And what I've realized is that for me, what is compelling about it, like, while I love those big mountain experiences, and, you know, that happens to be something that I personally, like, if I were given the opportunity to travel, I'd choose like a rocky, snowy mountain over a beach. So that's just me. But really what fuels my sort of passion for the planet and sort of keeps me going is the kind of intimate spaces, you know, the noticing the one tree that's right outside my window and sort of, you know, understanding how that changes and which birds kind of come in and out of it. And so all of that sort of, you know, leads me to think, into your question, that, you know, what's so important is providing those intimate connections for everyone, because they can happen in more crowded urban places. And, you know, there have been many people who have sort of written and expressed that. And I just think that's so important. And I will say the nonprofits in our network that are doing such great work on that are those that are, you know, focused on school gardens and community gardens, and, you know, giving that opportunity for people to get their hands in the dirt right outside their apartments. You know, organizations that are working on city parks and open spaces, which is, you know, so important. Just again, because it doesn't need to be a vast wilderness for you to have a tree that you can fall in love with. But it does need to be, you know, creating some real green space, as small as it may be. So I think that's a really, really important thing. And particularly when we want to, you know, think about it, when I think about our mission statement, our purpose of, you know, ensuring ensuring that our planet and future generations thrive, you know, that needs to be accessible to all people. And so thriving does not mean that just some people thrive and other people don't have access to thriving. So it really has to, you know, be accessible and equitable for all people. And so it creates just some really interesting ways of thinking about the environment and the environmental movement, because it's not just about those big mountains out there, even though we need those wild places, but it's all the intimate, close to home spaces.
Absolutely. And one of the things that has really struck me in the research and writing I've done over the last handful of years is the importance for our own health and well-being psychologically, and even in terms of our immune system and cognitive function, of that direct connection with soil, and to see living, growing plants. And I am, of course, I love the wilderness regions, but I'm also really excited about the opportunities in front of us in the urban and the suburban environments to effectively permaculture and forest and reforest and grow and work with those amazing biological forces that make our planet the living planet that it is. And my sense is that if we do a good job in the next, several years in the urban landscapes, it might result in all of the other important priorities sort of falling in line, because ultimately it will be a way for us to connect and reach millions of people and help establish those kinds of relationships, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I mean, because we're human organisms in the ecosystem that is our planet. And, we have a lot of different spaces that we live in, and we, a lot of different ways that we, find ourselves existing on the planet. But I do not feel that we are separate from the earth, even though a lot of our living structures separate us. But I think that connection is always there for us, because we are a living organism breathing in and out, and essentially, exchanging cells with the earth every day. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is so true. Well, let me just throw out there for our audience that they can engage with 1% for the Planet via the website, which is 1%fortheplanet.org. It's all spelled out. Folks can connect with you also, Kate, via LinkedIn, and I'll include the LinkedIn handle in the show notes. It's Kate Williams 87. And then Instagram is 1% FTP, and it's the number 1% FTP. Facebook is 1% for the planet, the number 1, and then percent for the planet are spelled out. Twitter, 1% FTP, same as the Instagram pattern. And then in LinkedIn, there's also a 1% for the planet company profile. We'll have all these links in the show notes, but I just want to make sure folks hear ways they can engage. And it's so great. And hearing a little bit of you describing a little bit your home in Vermont, and you refer to it as the Shire. What does that mean? Describe that for us, because I love New England, but I'm out in Colorado. What's happening right now in the Shire?
Yeah, well, we kind of half jokingly refer to it as that, but it also has a little bit of that feel. So it's I live in a small town with sort of kind of rolling hills that roll up into the Green Mountains, which would be foothills by Colorado standards, but are the sort of old mountains that have been feathered down here. And it's a very agricultural community set in the mountains. So, just from a look and feel, for any of you who read and created your vision of the Hobbit Shire, or those of you who saw the movie, there is, that similarity there. But I think also, probably more kind of fundamentally or thoughtfully part of that is that because of how rural this is, and because of the, extremes of weather that we face here, it can rain a lot. It can be icy instead of snowy. It's not always pleasant, but when it's beautiful, it's like heartbreakingly beautiful. And so there's just a really, really deep connection to the land. Like, this is an agricultural community. People, made this community by living off the land, and it continues to be very much a part of shaping who we are. And I feel grateful for that, because there is it isn't distant from us to understand that, like, we're eating food grown on, from this soil. And so when there's, conversation about organic, it's not that, if it's not organic, it's some field that's far away from our house. It's like, well, no, if they're using fertilizer, it's going into the river that our kids swim in. And it's, so you can connect some of the dots that I don't think we are always able to connect in our more sort of distant food systems, for example. And there's power in that. And, so I think that it creates this strong sense of connection to place, which I'm very, very grateful for.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it creates a beautiful image. Boy, to say something is heartbreakingly beautiful. What a turn of phrase. My goodness. We spoke about how individuals can engage and become part of the 1% for the planet community. And I also want to make sure we talk about two great campaigns that you guys are working with in the next few months. And then want to do a little foreshadowing for, what lies ahead in 2021, which is in part, I know, a response to what's going on with the COVID situation. So I want to ask you about both the Be 1% Better campaign and the End of Your Challenge grant. Can you tell us what those are and how folks can get involved?
Sure. Yeah. So, we were talking earlier about this idea of the network effect, that when you have like this amazing global network, there's the opportunity to, just ripple out in ways that are beyond any single entity's control, stories and messages and energy. And so the Be 1% Better campaign is really intended to build on that. And we've set it up as this idea that the verb be can be swapped in for a bunch of different verbs. So, a company that's a beer company can have, drink 1% better, shop 1% better could be sort of a broader message. Clothe yourself 1% better, vote 1% better. There's any number of ways that people can sort of take on this idea, and it essentially encapsulates or makes active this idea that everyone has a 1%. So, and sort of moves it into that more figurative realm. So it's building on our model. The model is giving 1% of sales, or giving your resources to the planet, and this is broadening the definition of resources. So you can be 1% better in a bunch of different ways. So that campaign has been going, throughout the summer, and we really set it up and equip our members to be able to, make it their own story and help to share that larger story. The End of Your Challenge grant is, similarly, kind of building on that network idea. So we have a donor, and then our whole board who came together. The donor $50,000, our board put in $50,000, which is awesome. We're so grateful to both of them. And their challenge to our community is to match that with either new or increased giving. And the way 1% for the Planet as an organization works is that part of our funding every year comes from donors who say, hey, we believe in the work that you do to engage members, to build this great network, to help tell their story, to vet the nonprofit partners. We know your staff works hard to do that work, to get more dollars out to nonprofits on the ground. So we want to support you. Mm-hmm. So this challenge grant is a way to, engage that network of donors who are helping us to, build this powerful engine, and to engage them in driving more giving. So it's a really exciting time. You can give 1% better. That's how we can connect the two of them. But yeah, we're really psyched about both of them.
That's really wonderful. So if I were to join as an individual 1%, would I also be able to participate in the challenge grant? Do those link?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Yes. So you, as an individual member, you get to choose where you want to direct your giving. And so you could, if you had never been an individual member before and you joined at the end of the year and you're like, this year I want my money to go to 1% for the planet. Next year I might give it to my local community garden. But, so then in that first year of giving, so if you gave before the end of this year, it would count towards our challenge grant. So yes. One thing I will clarify without getting too nitty gritty is you don't have to be an individual member to donate to 1% for the planet. So, we do have some just like straight up traditional nonprofit donors.
Yes.
And then we also have individual members who choose to donate all or part of their giving to us. But then most of our individual members are sort of working with us through what our model exists to do, which is to create a sort of home space for them from which they then are giving to our environmental nonprofits and driving that direct impact on the ground.
That's a great clarification. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yep.
So I also know that you guys have some really interesting things in the works for next year. And this is in part a response to some of the changes we've seen this year with COVID. Can you, I understand we won't necessarily get all the details, but can you give us an idea of what's coming?
Yeah, and I'm sure we're right in lockstep with so many other organizations and companies who are like, what will next year hold? How do we plan for that? Basically our assumption is that at least a good part of the year, if not most of the year, will continue to be mostly virtual engagement. So we feel that, it's is a great opportunity for us to, just solidify our position as a kind of virtual convener. And in many ways, it actually fits us really well because we are this global community and we love to get together in person, but then that's serving more sort of regional groups usually. So, we want to just jump right into having a really robust virtual strategy with, some webinar panels, opportunities members of our network to provide content that we can help share. So just a lot of ways that people can, have those peer-to-peer connections and peer-to-peer learning opportunities across our network, which we spoke about earlier, are such a powerful way that beyond the 1% giving, people are learning and growing and doing new things. So to create those virtually. We will also be relaunching our individual member program with some refined aspects to it, which we're really psyched about. It will, continue to have that customized, you choose where you give with our support, but we're also going to create, a way that you can give into kind of pooled portfolio where we'll identify the nonprofits, and that will just create this nice, simple, powerful way to give. And then, probably even some more things that we're still developing, because as I speak, we are doing our work planning. But I hope that gives a little tip of the hand of some of the great things we'll be doing.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I'm excited to see how that proceeds and how that can further activate and catalyze change and action in communities all over in these growing relationships.
Likewise.
Well, Kate, I'm so happy we had this opportunity to visit with you today, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to connect with us at the Y on Earth community. And I just want to invite you before we sign off for now, if there's anything else you'd like to share or say to us, it would be great to hear.
I guess I would just go back to what our conversation about hope. And, there's a lot going on in the world and in the United States right now that can make it hard to sort of stay hopeful, hard to stay engaged. And I would just, say that my hope of us is that we can stay connected to those really positive things that are happening out there and have those fuel our ability to continue to take action and create the world that we know is out there. And that we know can be this thriving planet and people. So stay hopeful.
Love it. That's so great. Stay hopeful. Well, thanks so much, Kate. It's great visiting with you.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Y on Earth Community Stewardship and Sustainability podcast series is hosted by Aaron William Perry, author, thought leader, and executive consultant. The podcast and video recordings are made possible by the generous support of people like you. To sign up as a daily, weekly, or monthly supporter, please visit yonearth.org/support. Support packages start at just $1 per month. The podcast series is also sponsored by several corporate and organization sponsors. You can get discounts on their products and services using the code YONEARTH, all one word with a Y. These sponsors are listed on the yonearth.org/support page. If you found this particular podcast episode especially insightful, informative, or inspiring, please pass it on and share it with a friend whom you think will also enjoy it. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. And thank you for being a part of the Y on Earth community.